Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're cutting through the noise around SOC 2 managed service providers. If you're a founder or a tech leader, you already know compliance isn't optional anymore. So we're skipping the basics. We're going to give you a highly practical, totally jargon-free framework to actually get SOC 2 done efficiently. The goal? Stop sweating the audits and start closing those massive enterprise deals. We've got a lot to cover, so here's the game plan. We'll start with the SOC 2 compliance gap. Look at what an MSP actually brings to the table and explain why just buying a GRC tool is not enough. Then we'll hit some real-world success stories, break down the red flags you absolutely need to avoid, and wrap up with exactly how to choose the right partner. Let's jump in. Let's kick things off with a pretty provocative question. Why do startups that just dropped serious cash on top-tiered compliance software still manage to fail their SOC 2 audits? It's a massive roadblock for business leaders, right? So let's unpack exactly why having a shiny new tool in your tech stack doesn't automatically guarantee you a passing grade. Section 1, the SOC 2 compliance gap and why startups struggle. Okay, here is the absolute core of the problem in the industry right now. Most early-stage startups have exactly one DevOps engineer and absolutely zero CISOs on staff. You simply don't have the dedicated in-house security team required to handle the absolute mountain of work SOC 2 demands. Think about it. You've got to write complex policies, enforce technical controls like multi-factor authentication, systematically collect evidence. You literally cannot dump all of that onto a single engineer and expect them to survive, much less pass an auditor's inspection. And the stakes here? They're incredibly high. Failing an audit doesn't just damage buyer trust, it can instantly put the brakes on six-figure deals. Even worse, it forces a full re-audit that's going to stall your company's growth for 3 to 6 very long, very brutal months. That is a delay most growing companies just can't afford. Moving to Section 2, enter the SOC 2 MSP. You're missing Copilot. So what exactly is an MSP in this context? An MSP is not just some outsourced vendor you email once a year. Think of them as your continuous, hands-on engineering help. They're your virtual security team, your compliance coach, and your evidence co-pilot all rolled into one. They help build your policies, they review your cloud configurations, and they get you ready for the actual auditor fieldwork. Basically, they're in the trenches right alongside you. What I love about this is how they break down this massive, overwhelming compliance beast into really concrete, jargon-free deliverables that directly protect your business. For policy creation, they're building custom controls aligned directly with the trust services criteria. For technical hardening, they do the heavy lifting, like AWS config checks, identity and access management reviews, setting up logging. They manage your evidence through regular walkthroughs, and when it comes to audit readiness, they'll actually run mock audits before the real auditor even sets foot in the door. All right, Section 3, GRC tools are not enough. This is a big misconception we need to clear up. GRC platforms like Drata or Vanta are fantastic. Really, they're incredible for automation, giving you sleek dashboards and hooking up all your integrations. But they're just tools. A piece of software isn't going to log into your cloud and actually harden it. It's not running manual risk assessments or checking your help desk tickets. The SOC 2 MSP is that experienced human operator who bridges the massive gap between software automation and actual enforced security compliance. Let's look at Section 4, real-world MSP success stories. It's all about speed and trust here. Take our first case study, DevSync. They're a CI/CD automation startup. They had just closed a $3 million seed round and were right in the middle of a pilot with a Fortune 100 insurance firm. They needed their SOC 2 Type I audit immediately. Atlant Security stepped in, delivered custom policies for their specific AWS and GitHub stack, integrated Vanta, and helped them pass their audit in just 7 weeks. 7 weeks. The CTO of DevSync put it perfectly. He said, "We didn't have a security team. Atlant was our security team." This really humanizes the experience, you know? The MSP didn't just hand over a checklist. They stepped in to actually configure backups, enforce IAM controls with the lone DevOps hire, and run mock audits. The result? DevSync closed a $540,000 pilot deal just 2 days after the final audit report was delivered. That is compliance literally driving revenue. We see a similar story with a mid-stage telehealth platform called Healthly. Their MSP stepped in, took their messy, completely siloed documentation, and totally streamlined it. The result here? They slashed their vendor security questionnaires by 70%, passed both their SOC 2 Type 2 and HIPAA attestation, and landed a major enterprise pharmaceutical client in just 3 weeks. The ROI on that is undeniable. On to Section 5, red flags and common pitfalls, or basically, what to avoid when hiring an MSP. The first massive red flag to watch out for is what we call policy template factories. Some providers will just hand you a giant bundle of generic PDFs. And let's be real, nobody reads those, especially not your auditor. If your policies don't actually reflect your tech stack, auditors will absolutely flag them, and your team won't even know how to follow them. The fix is simple. Demand custom, tailored workflows that specifically name your actual tools, like AWS S3 or GitHub SSO, and always ask to see policy samples before you sign a contract. Pitfall number 2 is over-relying on those GRC dashboards. It is so dangerous to just trust the green dots on your screen. If an MSP is just clicking checkboxes without actually verifying that the controls are implemented in your code, you might pass a readiness check, but you are absolutely going to fail the real audit. Demand manual verification. Ask to see real audit logs and make sure an actual engineer is reviewing your CI/CD pipelines and backups. The final big red flags are poor communication and getting ghosted on audit day. Long email chains are a disaster for gathering evidence. Make sure your MSP uses shared Slack channels or trackers like Jira or Asana. And most importantly, make sure they won't abandon you when the auditor actually shows up. A true compliance co-pilot stays in the room, hops on the fieldwork calls, and acts as your translator to explain your controls in real time.
Let's wrap up with Section 6, choosing your SOC2 partner, and your practical next steps.
Understanding how MSPs price their services is critical for your budget, and there are basically 3 models. Fixed fees are awesome for startups because they give you a super predictable flat rate for readiness and prep. Monthly retainers are great for scaling organizations that need ongoing long-term support for SOC 2, ISO, or vCISO services. Hourly pricing is the least predictable. Honestly, you should probably avoid it unless you have extremely tight control over the project scope. So what's the actual cost? Depending on your organization's scope, the complexity of your controls, and your GRC tool coverage, you can typically expect a reputable SOC2 MSP to cost somewhere in this range, $8,000 to $30,000. Here is your absolute must-have success checklist to protect that investment. Do not sign a contract unless they guarantee that policies will be custom and version controlled. Make sure technical controls like MFA and IAM are actually enforced and logged across your tools. Verify that evidence will be centralized, confirm they'll run mock audits before the real fieldwork begins, and ensure they'll stick around for ongoing post-audit remediation support. I want to leave you with this question. Are you treating your SOC 2 compliance as a painful, one-time checkbox, or are you ready to use it as a powerful tool for revenue growth? Finding the right compliance copilot can literally transform a stressful audit from a massive roadblock into a true growth accelerator. It speeds up your sales cycles, builds deep buyer trust, and lets your engineers get back to actually building a great product. Use your compliance as a multiplier for your business.